the United States should stop overthrowing governments. Blatantly disastrous, blatantly illegal. The U.S. foreign policy is a policy of overthrows rather than negotiations.
Jeffrey Sachs just skewered the U.S. government for embracing regime change operations, and in this clip explains how some of those operations have led to literal treason according to the U.S. Constitution's definition. They also explore some of the things that David Petraeus and Trump has said about Syria's new leader, and let's just say it's interesting. So please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Here's a very difficult to watch clip because of the fawning nature of this once formidable and prominent American official. You'll know who these two people are in a minute. This was not in front of the General Assembly, but this too happened at the United Nations yesterday. Chris, number 24.
As you know, Mr. President, I spent over 37 years in the U.S. Army, and I was a soldier, not a diplomat. So I hope you'll forgive me if I speak with the directness of the old soldier that I am as I get the first question out of the way. Because the fact is that we were on different sides when I was commanding the surge in Iraq. You were, of course, detained by U.S. forces for some 5 years, including, again, when I was the 4-star there. And here you are now as the president of Syria. I just want you to tell you, really on behalf of all the people who are here, that this conversation has truly filled me with enormous hope. It has been very, very heartening and illuminating. Your vision is powerful and clear. Your demeanor itself is very impressive as well.
Just think about that. All right, this is David Petraeus, one of the top-ranking generals in the United States, talking to Syria's new leader. His name is Al-Jalani, otherwise known as Al-Shaara. He's the former emir of Al-Qaeda that fought against troops that David Petraeus commanded. And you saw there that poster that was plastered there, that picture, was showing that there's a $10 million bounty on this guy's head because he was Al-Qaeda. Well, guess why he was deposed in Syria? Because Israel wanted Assad to be deposed. Assad was. And then Jalani took his place, and the U.S. sided with literal treason in Syria by funneling arms and finances to ISIS and to Al-Qaeda, the Al-Qaeda affiliate there, Al-Nusra, that was founded by Al-Shaara, Syria's new leader, just about a decade removed from 9/11. And we're supposed to believe that our government isn't duplicitous, isn't treacherous, isn't evil, and isn't treasonous, because I'm pretty sure that Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution makes pretty clear that treason is aiding or abetting enemies. It's adhering to the enemies of the United States, providing them with aid and comfort. That's exactly what our government did to these forces that eventually deposed Assad. Now, that didn't happen until the end of 2024, but this is on clear display here, and it's just sickening to see Petraeus just fawning over this guy. This guy that was involved in beheadings and terrorist attacks against U.S. troops in Iraq before moving to Syria and founding the Al-Qaeda affiliate there.
How are you holding up under all this pressure? Are you getting enough sleep at night? Again, I've been there.
Unreal.
And it is so very, very hard. And your many fans, and I am one of them, we do have worries.
Unreal.
Questioner, of course, is General Petraeus. The person next to him, of course, is somebody who has cut people's heads and hands off in front of their relatives.
Petraeus doesn't get very many things right. I'm sad to say. He told us how wonderful the Ukrainian counteroffensive would be in 2023. A complete, terrible debacle in which so many Ukrainians lost their lives. So I'm not very impressed as a general matter, or I should, okay, double entendre, but I'm not impressed by General Petraeus as a matter of our recent history, but also this approach, again, just makes a nonsense of what has happened. What happened in Syria is that in 2011, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton decided, to a significant extent pushed by Netanyahu, to overthrow a government. That's it. This is called U.S. regime change operations. It's not complicated. And it resulted in 14 years of disaster and ultimately in this new government, whatever it is, which already is seeing a lot of bloodshed and division inside Syria.
Yeah, no question. They're persecuting Christians, by the way, which is something Assad never did. You have Christians being executed there. And guess what? I'm not using that as propaganda. I don't want the U.S. to depose the government of Syria again over this. But he's exactly right. There was a regime change operation there against Assad, the Alawite, who did not persecute Christians or Druze. And, you know, that's something to be said there. But Israel wanted Assad deposed because they believed that Assad was a threat. You know, terrorist money was flowing through the organization, flowing through there that went to Hezbollah. That's their claim. So their influence over U.S. politics is palpable when you get the U.S. government to side with Al-Qaeda, showing the treachery and treason of those that supported that, like John McCain, going over there and posing with Al-Qaeda fighters. Jolani, again, it bears repeating. He had a $10 million bounty on his head from the United States. This was like Ayman al-Zawahiri and bin Laden. There was a reward offered for his head. He was an Al-Qaeda fighter. And if you don't believe that the U.S. did this in Syria, allowed money and aid to flow into Al-Qaeda and into ISIS to depose Assad, read up about Operation Timber Sycamore. U.S. aid poured $15 billion into that. And they'll say, oh, that was just for humanitarian aid. No, that's the cover. That's the cover the CIA uses to fund regime change operations in other countries. And in this case, the money flowed into the hands of Al-Qaeda, Jolani, or if you want to call him now, Al-Shaara, this villain that Petraeus is complimenting. It's just so sickening to watch.
But the narrative that Petraeus told is absurd. The United States should stop overthrowing governments. This is the bottom line. It should never have overthrown the government in Ukraine in 2014. It should never have launched what was a 14-year devastating war to overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian leader. It should never have invaded Iraq in 2003 to overthrow Saddam Hussein. It should never have bombed Libya to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi. The United States has been engaged in dozens of blatantly disastrous, blatantly illegal regime change operations, thinking that it can overthrow governments right and left and that something good will come of it.
Yeah, amen. He is so right on this, how disastrous regime change has been for U.S. foreign policy, and that does seem to be the default foreign policy option in Washington. Both the neocons and liberal establishment think that, and they're pretty indistinguishable, by the way, regardless of which administration controls the government. You know, under Biden, you had this same sort of thing that you have under Trump and Obama and Bush, this leading with bombing. And you can just ask yourself two questions about the regime change operations throughout history, especially modern history, to know that they're so, you know, absurd, destructive, and without any kind of merit. When you say, hey, when's the last time one of those countries was left in a better place after U.S. regime change operations? You know, Libya had open slavery markets after deposing Gaddafi, for instance. You know, in the Taliban, the U.S. replaced the Taliban with the Taliban over 20 years and hundreds of thousands of lives and hundreds of billions of dollars. I think the U.S. has spent $8 trillion on the war on terror in totality, and the U.S. taxpayer gets no benefit. When was the last time the U.S. taxpayer gets any kind of benefit? So yes, Sachs is absolutely right.
In the Middle East, these have, to a significant extent, been at the behest of Netanyahu, who wants us to continue this with Iran, except Iran's a big, powerful country with a 5,000-year civilizational history, we should recall. And so Netanyahu is utterly delusional, period. But the U.S. foreign policy is a policy of overthrows rather than negotiations. And that's, you have a general who has been part of all of this, who has spouted such nonsense over the years. And that's why we see the kind of fawning demonstration that you just showed us.
Yeah, pretty pathetic too. And, you know, how can this not be viewed as a slap to the face of the troops he commanded, by the way? You're going to be complicating. You're going to be complimenting the former emir of Al-Qaeda, now the leader of Syria. The guys that you fought against Al-Qaeda. And you're going to fawn all over this guy on national television. And you're going to ask about, you know, how hard things must be for him, man. This Al-Qaeda emir that cut off heads, served under Abu Musab al-Zarqawi in Iraq. He was the head of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and then Jilani spun off and founded Al-Nusra, the Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. It's just nonsense, but Sachs is totally right that the U.S., instead of negotiations, always defaults to regime change operations, and they haven't worked one bit. They haven't worked one bit even since they started, with Guatemala and Iran, ironically, and the Israelis are going to try to draw us into another war with Iran. There is technically a war going on, just a ceasefire. They're going to start clamoring for more U.S. intervention there. They've always wanted that regime change operation. Netanyahu's been talking, you know, that way since I was a young lad. You know, they're always seconds away from acquiring a nuke, and that's why you want us to overthrow them. No, that's not why you want us to overthrow them. You want them destabilized, just like you wanted Syria and Lebanon destabilized to expand Israel's borders in the Greater Israel Project. And I hate to say that my country defaults to the Israel first mentality in this regard, always folds to Israeli pressure, when that's so backward when you look at the supposed power dynamics here, where the U.S. is spent $20 billion on Israel last year, and I think is on pace to do something like that this year. But Israel is going to have more influence over our government than our government has over Israel. It's a total perversion of what is supposed to be the sovereignty apparent in the American system when you don't have entangling alliances embraced by politicians in power and you actually do what's in the interest of your citizens. That's not how our government works. Our government is a war machine regime where the Israel lobby and the military-industrial complex and the bankers, you know, align in tandem to overthrow countries. And Syria is one of the worst examples of it, and the sole example where you can truly pin down these villains in our government as the treasonous monsters they are for aid and abetting Al-Qaeda just 1 decade after 9/11. And that regime change did not fully come into place until late 2024. That is true, but man, did they try. And finally it happened with the support of, you know, Turkey and some other powers. But that's where we're left with. And I just think that Sachs articulates this so well. He knows the full breadth of how disastrous each and every one of these affairs are. But I say, hey, we go back to Washington's mantra and his farewell address when he said, you know, foreign entanglements, though enticing to some, will always be disastrous. And man, that take could not have aged better, especially looking at the last few decades of U.S. history and U.S. foreign policy. But what do you think? Is Jeffrey Sachs right about this? You know, is Al-Shaara, you know, one of the most villainous people imaginable? And, you know, what accounts for Petraeus acting like this in his presence? Let me know down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Judge Napolitano. Thank you for this interview. And please consider becoming a member. If you click the join button below, you can help support my channel. And in return, I'll give you access to all my members-only videos before they go live to the general public on my channel. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.